How does one Vegas trip with a male friend lead to my entire life unraveling in a single afternoon? When legal documents arrived at my door, I finally realized my fiancé's revenge wasn't about shouting or drama. It was about taking everything I thought I controlled and turning it to dust. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The evening light filtered through our suburban home's kitchen windows as I stirred the pasta sauce, planning my approach carefully. Nate sat at the dining table, reviewing client files with his usual methodical precision. His dark hair was slightly mussed from running his hands through it, a habit he'd developed during tax season that never quite disappeared. "Honey," I began, keeping my voice light and casual. "Landon mentioned this amazing conference in Vegas next month. It's all about customer service innovations, and my company would probably reimburse most of it." Nate looked up from his papers, his brown eyes focusing on me with that steady gaze I'd grown accustomed to over our 3 years together. "A conference? That's great, Eularia. When is it?" I turned back to the stove, hiding my expression. "The weekend of the 15th. It's just a quick trip. Fly out Friday morning, back Sunday evening. Landon's going too since his company is sending him." The silence stretched long enough that I had to turn around. Nate was studying me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Just you and Landon?" he asked quietly. "Well, there will be hundreds of people at the conference," I said, forcing a laugh. "It's not like we're going alone. Besides, you know Landon. He's been my friend since college. We've never been anything more than friends." "I know that," Nate said, but something in his tone suggested he wasn't entirely comfortable. "It's just Vegas, and a weekend trip." I felt irritation flare in my chest. This was exactly what I'd expected, Nate being paranoid and controlling, just like my mother always said he was. "Nate, seriously, you're going to be one of those fiancés who doesn't trust his partner to go on a business trip. That's incredibly insecure." His face flushed slightly. "I'm not being insecure, Eularia. I'm just saying it feels a little unusual. Maybe I could come with you, make it a weekend getaway." "It's a work conference, not a vacation," I snapped, then immediately softened my tone. "Look, I understand you might feel left out, but this is important for my career. You wouldn't want me holding you back from professional opportunities, would you?" Before he could respond, my 10-year-old daughter Maya bounded into the kitchen, her backpack sliding off her shoulder onto the floor. "Mum, are you and Nate fighting?" she asked, looking between us with those perceptive eyes that sometimes saw too much. "We're not fighting, sweetheart," I said, shooting Nate a meaningful look. "We're just discussing a work trip I might take." "Where to?" Maya asked, climbing onto a bar stool. "Las Vegas. There's a big conference there for my job." Maya's face scrunched up. "Isn't that where people gamble and stuff? Why would they have a work thing there?" "Lots of companies have conferences in Vegas, honey," I explained patiently. "It has big hotels and convention centers." Nate was still watching me, and I could practically see the wheels turning in his head. "Will you be staying at the same hotel as Landon?" "I assume so. It's where the conference is being held. Look, if you're going to make this into some big drama, maybe I just won't go." "I didn't say you shouldn't go," Nate said carefully. "I'm just trying to understand the arrangements." My phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it quickly, Landon asking if I'd talked to Nate yet. I slipped the phone back into my pocket. "The arrangements are simple," I said, my voice taking on an edge. "I go to Vegas, I attend sessions on customer service best practices, I network with other professionals, and I come home with new ideas for my team. That's it." Maya looked uncomfortable, picking at her fingernails, a nervous habit she'd developed since her father and I divorced 4 years ago. "Can we just have dinner?" she asked quietly. "I have homework." I felt a pang of guilt. Maya had been through enough upheaval in her young life. The last thing she needed was tension between Nate and me. "Of course, baby. Nate, Can we table this discussion for later? He nodded, but I could see he wasn't satisfied. As I served dinner, my phone buzzed again. This time I ignored it, but I noticed Nate's eyes flick to my pocket. Later that evening, after Maya had gone to bed, Nate approached me in our bedroom where I was folding laundry. "I'm sorry if I seemed unsupportive earlier," he said. "If this conference is important for your career, you should go." I looked up, surprised by the concession. "Really? Really? I trust you, Eularia. I always have." Something about the way he said it made me feel simultaneously relieved and guilty. I pushed the guilt aside. There was nothing to feel guilty about. Landon and I were friends. The fact that we'd been flirting more lately didn't mean anything serious. "Thank you," I said, standing on my tiptoes to kiss his cheek. "I love you." "I love you too," he replied, but his smile seemed forced. That night, after Nate fell asleep, I quietly retrieved my phone and checked Landon's messages. "Did you ask him?" the first one read. "How did it go?" was the second. I typed back quickly. "All good, he's fine with it." Landon's response came immediately. "Perfect. This is going to be amazing. Just us, no drama, no responsibilities. Can't wait." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing back. "It's still a work conference, Landon." "Of course," he replied. "But we can have some fun too, right? What happens in Vegas?" I deleted the message thread and set my phone aside, but sleep was a long time coming. Beside me, Nate breathed steadily, and I wondered if he was really as okay with this trip as he'd claimed to be. The next morning, I booked my flight and hotel room while Nate was in the shower. The confirmation emails went to my personal account, and I made sure to mark the weekend on our shared calendar as Customer Service Conference, Vegas. The Bellagio's lobby was everything I'd imagined: soaring ceilings, the famous glass flowers, and an energy that made me feel like I was stepping into a different world. Landon met me at the check-in counter, looking more relaxed than I'd seen him in months. "Eularia." He wrapped me in a hug that lasted just a beat too long. "You made it. How was your flight?" "Good," I said, suddenly aware of how different this felt from our usual coffee meetings back home. "The hotel is incredible." "Wait until you see the rooms," he said with a grin. "I may have upgraded us." "Us?" I asked, confused. "Our rooms," he clarified quickly. "They're on the same floor. Easier for coordinating conference schedules." As we walked toward the elevators, I noticed how Landon's hand kept finding the small of my back, guiding me through the crowds. It should have felt natural. We'd been friends for over a decade, but something about the Vegas atmosphere made every touch feel charged with possibility. "So what's the plan for tonight?" I asked as we waited for the elevator. "I saw there's a welcome reception at 7. "Actually," Landon said, his voice dropping lower, "I was thinking we could skip the reception. There's this amazing restaurant I've been wanting to try, and then maybe we could see a show or hit the casino. When's the last time you did something just for fun?" I thought about Nate back home, probably helping Maya with her math homework right about now. "Landon, we're here for the conference." "The conference doesn't start until tomorrow morning," he said as the elevator doors opened. "Tonight is ours." My room was on the 23rd floor with a view of the Strip that took my breath away. I stood at the window, watching the lights begin to twinkle as the sun set, and felt a thrill of freedom I hadn't experienced in years. My phone rang. Nate's ringtone. "Hey," I answered, still staring out at the city. "Hi, beautiful. How's Vegas treating you?" "It's amazing," I said, then caught myself. "I mean, the hotel is nice. Very professional setup for the conference." "That's great. Maya wanted me to tell you she got an A on her science test." "That's wonderful. Tell her I'm proud of her." "I will. So what's on the agenda tonight?" I hesitated for just a moment. "Oh, probably just room service and reviewing the conference schedule. I want to be fresh for tomorrow." "Sounds smart. Well, I won't keep you. Love you." "Love you too." After I hung up, I stared at my reflection in the window. Why had I lied? Having dinner with Landon wasn't wrong. We were friends. But something about the way he'd looked at me in the lobby, the way he'd said, "Tonight is ours," made me feel like I was crossing a line I couldn't uncross. A knock at my door interrupted my thoughts. "Ready for the best night Vegas has to offer?" Landon asked when I opened it. He'd changed into a dark suit that made his blue eyes pop, and he was holding a bottle of champagne. "Where did you get that?" "Concierge hooked me up. Come on, Eularia. When's the last time you celebrated just being alive?" An hour later, we were seated at a restaurant that definitely wasn't in my conference budget. The champagne had made me feel loose and giggly, and Landon was regaling me with stories about his latest dating disasters. "So she shows up to the restaurant wearing a wedding dress," he was saying, "and when I ask her about it, she says she wanted to see how I'd react to the idea of marriage." I nearly choked on my wine. "You're kidding." "I wish I were." That's when I realized I needed to take a break from dating apps and focus on what's really important. His eyes met mine across the table. Spending time with people who actually mattered to me. The way he was looking at me made my stomach flutter. "Landon, I know you're engaged," he said quickly. "I respect that, but you have to know how I feel about you, Eularia. I felt this way since college." "We're friends," I said, but my voice sounded uncertain even to me. "Are we? Because friends don't usually make me feel like this." He reached across the table and took my hand. "Tell me you don't feel it too." I should have pulled my hand away. I should have reminded him that I was wearing another man's ring. Instead, I let him trace circles on my palm with his thumb and pretended the warmth spreading through my chest was just from the wine. "This is complicated," I whispered. "It doesn't have to be. Not tonight." My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. "Hope you're having fun at your boring conference." The guilt hit me like a physical blow. I pulled my hand back and grabbed my phone. "I should call home," I said. "Check on Maya." "It's past her bedtime," Landon pointed out. "Besides, you're always taking care of everyone else. When do you get to take care of yourself?" He was right. When was the last time I'd done something just for me? Between work, Maya, and managing Nate's expectations, I felt like I was constantly performing, constantly being what everyone else needed me to be. "You're right," I said, putting my phone away. "Tonight is about me." Landon's smile was triumphant. "That's my girl." After dinner, we wandered through the casino. Landon taught me how to play blackjack, standing close behind me as he guided my hands, his breath warm against my ear as he whispered strategy. Every time I won a hand, he'd squeeze my shoulders in celebration, and I found myself leaning back into his touch. "You're a natural," he murmured after I won my third hand in a row. "I have a good teacher," I replied, turning in my chair to face him. We were close enough that I could see the flecks of gold in his blue eyes, close enough that it would take barely any movement at all to close the distance between us. "Eularia," he said softly, and I knew we were about to cross a line that would change everything. My phone rang, shattering the moment. Nate's ringtone again. "Don't answer it," Landon said, but I was already reaching for the phone. "I have to. What if something's wrong with Maya?" "Hey," I answered, stepping away from the blackjack table. "Sorry to bother you," Nate said, and I could hear the television in the background. "Maya's fine, she's asleep. I just got a credit card alert on my phone. There was a charge at some fancy restaurant in Vegas for $240. I wanted to make sure your card wasn't stolen or something." My blood went cold. Nate and I shared a credit card account, something I'd completely forgotten about when Landon insisted on paying for dinner, and I'd offered to split it. "Oh," I said, scrambling for an explanation. "That was just dinner. You know how expensive everything is in Vegas." $240 for one person seems pretty steep, even for Vegas. "Well, I had a few drinks too. You know how they mark up alcohol at these places." There was a pause. "Okay, just wanted to make sure everything was all right." "Everything's fine. I should go, though. Early morning tomorrow." "Of course. Love you." "Love you too." When I turned back to Landon, He was watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "Everything okay?" "Fine," I said, but the magic of the evening felt broken. "I think I should head up to my room. Big day tomorrow." "Eularia, wait." He caught my arm as I started to walk away. "Don't let him ruin this." "He's not ruining anything. I'm just tired." But as I rode the elevator up to my room alone, I couldn't shake the feeling that I'd just made a mistake that was going to cost me more than I was prepared to pay. Monday morning, back at the office, felt surreal after the glittering excess of Vegas. I sat in the break room, stirring my coffee and trying to process what had happened over the weekend. Nothing had actually happened. I'd gone back to my room alone both nights, attended most of the conference sessions, and maintained appropriate boundaries with Landon, mostly. Well, look who's back from Sin City," said Jessica, my coworker, sliding into the chair across from me. "You look like you had more fun than any work conference should allow." I forced a laugh. It was actually pretty boring. Lots of presentations on customer retention strategies. "Uh-huh," Jessica said with a knowing smirk. "And I'm sure that gorgeous friend of yours who picked you up from the airport was just there for the riveting panel discussions too." My stomach dropped. "What do you mean picked me up?" "I saw his Instagram story. That picture of you two at the Bellagio fountain. Very romantic for a business trip." I grabbed my phone and quickly found Landon's Instagram. Sure enough, there was a photo from our last night, me laughing at something he'd said, his arm around my waist, the fountain behind us lit up in brilliant colors. The caption read, "Vegas nights with this beautiful woman. Blessed, Hamana Vegas, Sanera good times." "Shit," I muttered under my breath. "Language, Eularia," said Tom from accounting, who'd just walked into the break room. "Though I have to say, that picture explains a lot about your glowing complexion today." "It's not what it looks like," I said quickly. "We're just friends." "Hey, no judgment here," Tom said, raising his hands. "But you might want to have a conversation with your fiancé before he sees that picture. These things have a way of getting around." The rest of the day passed in a blur of anxiety. Every time my phone buzzed, I expected it to be Nate confronting me about the Instagram post. But the calls and texts never came. When I got home that evening, he was in the kitchen making dinner, same as always. "How was your first day back?" he asked, kissing my cheek as I walked in. "Fine," I said, studying his face for any signs that he'd seen the photo. "How was your day?" "Good. Maya got invited to a sleepover this weekend. I told her it was okay with me if it's okay with you." We fell into our normal evening routine, dinner, helping Maya with homework, watching TV together on the couch. But I couldn't shake the feeling that Nate was watching me more carefully than usual, like he was looking for something. "I'm going to take a shower," I announced around 9 o'clock. "I'll be up in a bit," Nate said, not looking away from his laptop screen. In the bathroom, I finally allowed myself to check my phone properly. 3 missed calls from my mother, 2 texts from Landon, and a notification that I'd been tagged in several social media posts from the weekend. My mother's voicemail was typically dramatic. "Eularia, honey, I saw the pictures from your trip. You looked absolutely radiant. I hope that fiancé of yours appreciates what a catch you are. Some men just don't know how to let their women shine. Call me back." Landon's texts were more concerning. "Hope you got home safe. Can't stop thinking about this weekend." And then, "I know nothing happened, but it felt like something could have. That has to mean something, right?" I deleted both messages without responding. The social media tags were from other conference attendees, group photos from various sessions and networking events. In most of them, Landon and I were standing close together, looking more like a couple than colleagues. In one particularly damning photo from the Saturday night networking mixer, his hand was resting on my lower back, while I laughed at something he'd said, my body language clearly comfortable with his touch. When Nate came to bed an hour later, I pretended to be asleep, but I lay awake most of the night, wondering how long I could keep pretending that nothing had changed. The next morning, Nate was unusually quiet during breakfast. Maya chattered about her upcoming sleepover, while he nodded absently, stirring his coffee with mechanical precision. "Everything okay?" I asked. "Just thinking about work stuff," he said, but he wouldn't meet my eyes. At the office, Jessica cornered me again during lunch. "So I may have done something," she said, looking slightly guilty. "What kind of something?" "I may have shown some people those Vegas pictures. They're all over social media, Eularia. People are talking." "What people? What are they saying?" "Well, Margaret from HR asked if you and Nate had broken up, and I heard Tom telling someone in accounting that you were having an affair." My face burned with embarrassment and anger. "I am not having an affair. Landon and I are friends. We've been friends since college." "Look, I'm not judging," Jessica said, "but you have to admit, those pictures tell a different story. And the way you're glowing lately, when's the last time Nate made you look that happy?" The question hit me harder than I expected. When was the last time Nate had made me feel the way Landon did in Vegas? When was the last time he'd made me feel exciting and desired instead of comfortable and stable? "My relationship with Nate is fine," I said firmly. "If you say so. But honey, if I were you, I'd be careful. Office gossip has a way of spreading beyond the office." That afternoon, I got a call from my mother. "Darling, I've been thinking about our conversation yesterday," she said without preamble. "Well, my conversation with your voicemail anyway. You never called me back." "Sorry, Mom, it's been busy." "I'm sure it has. Listen, I want you to know that I think you handled this Vegas situation perfectly." "What do you mean?" "Well, you're a vibrant, intelligent woman in your prime. You shouldn't have to dim your light just because your fiancé is insecure. If he can't handle you having male friends and enjoying yourself, that says more about him than it does about you." "Mom, it's not that simple." "Isn't it? Sweetheart, you've been taking care of everyone else for years. First that deadbeat ex-husband of yours, then raising Maya as a single mother, now tiptoeing around Nate's feelings. When do you get to just be happy?" It was almost exactly what Landon had said in Vegas. The coincidence felt like a sign. "I should go," I said. "Maya will be home soon." "Think about what I said, darling. Life's too short to spend it making yourself smaller for men who don't appreciate your full potential." When I got home that evening, I found Nate sitting at the kitchen table with his laptop open and a stack of papers beside him. He looked up when I walked in, and something in his expression made my stomach clench. "We need to talk," he said quietly. "About what?" "I think you know." Maya chose that moment to burst through the front door, backpack flying and full of stories about her day. Nate and I maintained forced smiles while she told us about a substitute teacher and a pop quiz in science, but the tension between us was thick enough to cut. "Why don't you go start your homework, sweetheart?" I suggested when she finally wound down. "Dinner will be ready in about an hour." After Maya disappeared upstairs, Nate and I faced each other across the kitchen island, like adversaries preparing for battle. "I saw the pictures," he said simply. "What pictures?" "Don't lie to me, Eularia. Please don't make this worse by lying." I felt cornered, defensive. "They're just pictures from a work conference. I'm sorry if you're uncomfortable with me having male friends, but I can't control how things look in photos." "Is that really what you think this is about? Me being uncomfortable with your friendships?" "Isn't it?" Nate was quiet for a long moment, studying my face. "I've been going over our credit card statements," he said finally. "That dinner on Friday night, $240 at a restaurant that doesn't offer conference group rates. The bar charges on Saturday night. The spa treatment on Sunday morning that you never mentioned. I can explain all of that. I'm sure you can. You're very good at explaining things, Eularia. The question is whether you're going to tell me the truth or just another version of the story that makes you look innocent." The accusation stung because it was uncomfortably close to accurate. "I went to Vegas for a work conference. I attended the sessions. I networked with other professionals. And yes, I had some fun too. I'm sorry if that threatens you." It doesn't threaten me, Nate said, his voice getting quieter instead of louder. It disappoints me. Somehow, that was worse than if he'd shouted. Maya's 11th birthday fell on a Saturday, 3 weeks after my return from Vegas. I'd planned a dinner at her favorite Italian restaurant, inviting Nate's family and a few close friends to celebrate. What I hadn't planned for was how awkward everything had become. The tension between Nate and me had been simmering since our kitchen confrontation, never quite boiling over, but never disappearing either. We were polite to each other, functional as co-parents, but the easy intimacy we'd once shared felt like a memory from someone else's life. "Mom, do I look okay?" Maya asked, spinning in front of the mirror in her new dress, a purple sundress with tiny flowers that made her look older than her 11 years. "You look beautiful, sweetheart," I said, adjusting the thin straps on her shoulders. "Ready for your birthday dinner?" "I guess. Are you and Nate going to be weird again?" The question caught me off guard. "What do you mean, weird?" "You know, all polite and fake smiley, like when you and Dad used to fight but pretend you weren't." My heart clenched. Maya had been through one divorce already. The last thing I wanted was for her to worry about another one. "Nate and I aren't fighting," I said carefully. "Sometimes adults just have things they need to work through. But you're still getting married, right?" I looked at my daughter's anxious face and felt the weight of all my choices pressing down on me. "Of course we are. Don't worry about grown-up stuff, okay? Tonight is about celebrating you." At the restaurant, I threw myself into playing the role of the perfect fiancé and mother. I laughed at Nate's brother Owen's jokes, complimented his mother Margot on her new haircut, and made sure Maya felt like the center of attention. But I could feel Nate watching me with that careful, measuring gaze he'd developed lately. "Eularia, you seem different," Margot said during a lull in conversation. "More energetic lately." "I've been focusing on self-care," I said, using the phrase my mother had suggested. "It's important to maintain your own identity in a relationship." I caught Nate's slight wince at the comment, but before he could respond, my phone buzzed with a text message. I glanced at it automatically, a habit I'd developed over years of being a working single mother. The message was from Landon. "Thinking about you today. Hope you're having a good weekend. Miss our Vegas talks." My blood went cold. I quickly turned the phone face down, but not before Maya, who was sitting beside me, caught a glimpse of the screen. "Who's Landon?" she asked innocently. "And why did he send you a kissy face?" The table went silent. Margot's eyebrows rose slightly. Owen looked confused, and Nate's face went completely blank, which I'd learned was more dangerous than anger. "He's just a friend from work," I said quickly, forcing a laugh. "Some people just use a lot of emojis in their texts." "But why would your work friend miss talking to you?" Maya pressed with the relentless logic of a child. "Don't you see him at work every day?" "Maya, stop being nosy," I said, my voice sharper than I'd intended. "It's rude to read other people's text messages." Maya's face crumpled slightly. "I wasn't trying to read it. It just popped up and I saw... Well, next time mind your own business," I snapped, then immediately felt terrible as tears welled up in my daughter's eyes. "Eularia," Nate said quietly, "she's just a kid." "I know she's just a kid. I don't need you to tell me how to parent my daughter." The words hung in the air like a slap. Nate had been nothing but supportive of Maya since we'd started dating, stepping into a father figure role with patience and love. Calling her my daughter instead of our daughter was deliberately cruel, and everyone at the table knew it. "Maybe we should order dessert," Owen suggested weakly, trying to salvage the evening. But the damage was done. Maya was fighting back tears. Margot was looking at me with barely concealed disapproval, and Nate had withdrawn into himself completely. "I need to use the restroom," Nate said, standing abruptly. "Owen, could you come with me for a minute?" After they left, Margot leaned across the table toward me. "I don't know what's going on with you lately," she said in a low voice, "but my son deserves better than this." "I don't know what you mean," I said defensively. I think you do, and I think you need to decide what you really want before you hurt him any more than you already have. When Nate and Owen returned to the table, Nate's demeanor had shifted from withdrawn to coldly polite. I think we should probably head home, he said. Maya looks tired. But we haven't had cake yet, Maya protested weakly. We can have cake at home, Nate said gently, his voice warm when he spoke to her, but cooling again when his eyes met mine. I picked up that chocolate cake you like from the bakery. The drive home was silent except for Maya's occasional sniffles from the back seat. I wanted to apologize, to explain, to somehow fix what I'd broken, but every time I opened my mouth, the words seemed inadequate. At home, we went through the motions of birthday cake and present opening, but the joy had gone out of the evening. Maya managed to smile when she unwrapped the art supplies I'd bought her and the science kit from Nate, but I could tell she was still hurt by my earlier sharpness. I'm sorry I snapped at you at dinner, I said when I tucked her into bed. That wasn't fair. It's okay, Mom, but are you and Nate really okay? You seem mad at each other all the time now. We're fine, sweetheart. Sometimes adults just go through rough patches. It doesn't mean anything's wrong. But as I said the words, I wondered if I was lying to her or to myself. Downstairs, I found Nate loading the dishwasher with mechanical precision. Nate, about tonight. Don't, he said without looking up. Please don't explain or justify or tell me I'm misunderstanding something. I'm tired, Eularia. I'm tired of feeling like I'm crazy for noticing that everything's changed. Nothing's changed. He finally looked at me, and the sadness in his eyes was worse than anger would have been. Everything's changed, he said quietly. You've changed, we've changed, and I don't know how to fix it. Maybe there's nothing to fix. Maybe this is just what relationships look like when they mature. Is that what you think this is? Maturity? He gestured between us. This distance, this politeness, this feeling like we're strangers living in the same house. I didn't have an answer for that. I'm going to stay in the guest room tonight, he said. I think we both need some space to think. As I lay alone in our bed that night, I couldn't stop thinking about Landon's text message. He'd been reaching out more frequently since Vegas, and I'd been responding. Not flirting exactly, but not discouraging him either. Just friendly conversations that felt more intimate than they should have. I picked up my phone and scrolled through our recent message thread. Complaints about work, memories from college, observations about life that felt too personal to share with someone who wasn't my partner. When had Landon become the person I turned to when I needed to vent or laugh or feel understood? My phone buzzed with a new message from him. Sorry if my earlier text caused any problems. Just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you. I stared at the message for a long time before typing back. It's fine, but maybe we should keep things more professional. His response came quickly. Of course, but Eularia, if you ever need someone to talk to, I'm here. I know things are complicated at home. How did he know things were complicated at home? Had I been that obvious in my complaints about Nate? The thought that I'd been emotionally cheating, sharing intimate details of my relationship with another man, hit me like a physical blow. I deleted the message thread and put my phone away, but sleep was impossible. In the guest room down the hall, I could hear Nate moving around, probably as sleepless as I was, and I knew that Maya's innocent question had opened a door that I might not be able to close again. The local cafe where our friend group met for monthly brunches had always felt like neutral territory. Exposed brick walls, mismatched vintage furniture, and the kind of artisanal coffee that made everyone feel sophisticated. It was the perfect backdrop for catching up on gossip and maintaining the social connections that made suburban life bearable. But as I walked in that Sunday morning, 2 weeks after Maya's disastrous birthday dinner, I could feel the shift in atmosphere immediately. Conversations paused as I approached our usual table in the corner, and the smiles felt forced. Eularia, Jessica called out with overly bright enthusiasm. There she is, We were just talking about you. I slid into the empty chair they'd saved for me, noting that it was positioned so I'd have to turn to see everyone's faces. A subtle isolation technique that made my stomach clench. All good things, I hope, I said, trying to match Jessica's cheerful tone. Of course, said Amanda, one of the newer additions to our group. We were just wondering how things are going with you and Nate. You two seemed a little tense at Maya's birthday dinner. So they'd heard about that. In a town this size, gossip traveled faster than wildfire. We're fine, I said firmly. Every couple goes through rough patches. It's completely normal. Absolutely, agreed Sarah, but her tone suggested she didn't believe me. Though I have to say, some of those Vegas pictures were pretty interesting. My face heated up. Those pictures were taken out of context. Landon and I are friends. We've been friends since college. Oh, we know, Jessica said, exchanging glances with the others. It's just that friendship can be complicated sometimes, especially when one person is in a committed relationship. The passive-aggressive undertone was unmistakable. These women, who I'd considered close friends for years, were sitting in judgment of me based on social media posts and second-hand gossip. I think you're all making this into something it's not, I said, my voice taking on an edge. I went to Vegas for a work conference. I attended professional development sessions. I networked with colleagues. The fact that one of those colleagues happens to be an old friend doesn't make it inappropriate. No one's saying it's inappropriate, Amanda said carefully. We're just concerned about you. You seem different lately, more distant, and Nate looked pretty unhappy at Maya's party. Maybe Nate's the problem, I said, the words coming out harsher than I'd intended. Maybe I'm not different. Maybe I'm just finally standing up for myself instead of walking on eggshells around his insecurities. The silence that followed was deafening. These women had known Nate almost as long as they'd known me. They'd seen how patient he was with Maya, how supportive he'd been during my divorce, how he'd seamlessly integrated into our social circle without ever trying to change the dynamics. Nate's insecure? Sarah asked, her voice carefully neutral. That's not the impression I've gotten from him. You don't live with him, I said defensively. You don't see how he questions every friendship I have, how he makes me feel guilty for having a social life outside of our relationship. When has Nate ever done that? Jessica asked, and I could hear genuine confusion in her voice. He's always encouraged you to spend time with us. He's never complained about girls' nights or weekend trips. This is different. How? I struggled to articulate something that made sense even to me. He doesn't trust me. He went through our credit card statements. He's been watching me constantly. He made a huge deal about me going to a work conference just because a male colleague was there. Eularia, Amanda said gently, if my husband saw pictures of me looking at another man the way you were looking at Landon in those Vegas photos, he'd have questions too. That doesn't make him insecure, it makes him human. So now you're all relationship experts, I snapped. None of you have perfect marriages. Sarah, didn't you tell us last month that you and Mike barely talk anymore? And Jessica, when's the last time you and David did anything together besides argue about money? The table went quiet again, but this time the silence felt different, hurt and shocked instead of just uncomfortable. That was uncalled for, Sarah said quietly. She was right, and I knew it, but I felt cornered, attacked, and my instinct was to lash out. I'm just saying that maybe you should focus on your own relationships instead of judging mine. We're not judging you, Jessica said, but her voice had cooled considerably. We're worried about you. You're our friend, and you're acting like someone we don't recognize. Maybe you never really knew me at all. Maybe I'm just finally showing you who I really am instead of the version of myself I thought you wanted to see. Amanda gathered her purse and stood up. I think I should go. This conversation isn't productive. Amanda, wait, Sarah said, but Amanda was already walking away. The remaining three of us sat in awkward silence for a moment before Jessica spoke up. Eularia, I don't know what's going on with you, but this isn't like you. The friend I know is kind and thoughtful and doesn't attack people who care about her. The friend you know is tired of being judged and gossiped about, I said. If you can't support me, then maybe we don't have as much in common as I thought. I stood up and walked out, leaving them sitting at the table with their half-finished mimosas and shocked expressions. In my car, I sat for a moment with my hands shaking on the steering wheel, wondering what had just happened. My phone buzzed with a text from Landon. "How's your Sunday going? Thinking about you." Without thinking, I called him. "Eularia, everything okay? You sound upset." "I just had the worst brunch of my life," I said, and found myself telling him everything. The confrontation with my friends, their questions about Vegas, their defense of Nate. "They sound jealous," Landon said when I finished, "and honestly, a little judgmental. True friends would support you no matter what." That's what I thought, but they all acted like I was the problem, like I was doing something wrong by having a friendship with you. You're not doing anything wrong. You're a grown woman who deserves to have relationships that make you feel valued and understood. If Nate and your friends can't handle that, that's their issue, not yours. It was exactly what I needed to hear, and I felt some of the tension in my chest ease. "Thank you," I said. "I needed someone to remind me that I'm not crazy." "You're not crazy. You're just growing, and sometimes growth means outgrowing people who want to keep you small." When I got home, I found Nate in the living room reading while Maya worked on a puzzle at the coffee table. The domestic scene should have felt comforting, but instead it felt suffocating. "How was brunch?" Nate asked without looking up from his book. "Fine," I said, then immediately regretted the lie. But how could I explain that I'd just burned bridges with our closest friends because I couldn't handle them questioning my relationship with another man? "Mom, can you help me with this corner piece?" Maya asked. "I can't figure out where it goes." I sat down beside her and studied the puzzle, a 1,000-piece landscape that she'd been working on for weeks. The piece she was holding clearly belonged in the sky section, but she kept trying to force it into the mountain area. "Sometimes things don't fit where we think they should," I said, gently guiding her hand to the correct spot. "You have to be willing to try different places until you find where you belong." As the piece clicked into place, I wondered if I was talking to Maya or to myself. That evening, after Maya went to bed, I found an envelope on the kitchen counter with my name written on it in Nate's careful handwriting. My hands trembled as I opened it, somehow knowing that whatever was inside was going to change everything. The legal documents were neatly organized and clearly explained. Notice of legal separation, custody petition, asset division proposals. At the bottom, a note in Nate's handwriting. "I love you enough to let you go, find whatever it is you're looking for, but I love myself too much to keep pretending this isn't happening." I sank into a kitchen chair, staring at the papers, and finally understanding that my choices had consequences I hadn't been prepared to face. The conference room smelled like lemon polish and ambush. Patricia Chen didn't smile. She just opened the folder and let the evidence fall out like a deck of cards I'd already lost. Printed texts, hotel receipts, photos of Landon's hand on the small of my back in Vegas, my head thrown back laughing like I didn't have a daughter waiting at home. Nate sat beside her, calm, eyes on the table. He hadn't looked at me once. "Primary custody to Mr. Hart," Patricia said, sliding the proposal across. "The house. No child support requested. Generous visitation for you. Every other weekend. Half the summer. Alternating holidays." My lawyer, some kid I'd found on Yelp, cleared his throat. "We'll need time to review." "You have until Friday," Patricia said. "After that, we file unilaterally." I laughed, high and brittle. "Emotional infidelity isn't even a thing. I never slept with him." "You used our joint card to buy him drinks for him," Nate said quietly. The first words he'd spoken to me in weeks. "You told your mother I was controlling because I asked who you were texting at 2 a.m. You let Maya hear you call me insecure in the next room. That's enough." I looked at the custody schedule. My name in tiny font, under non-residential parent. Nate, please. Maya asked me last week if you still loved her, or if you love Uncle Landon now. His voice didn't waver. She's 6. The room went blurry. Patricia closed the folder. Sign, and this stays quiet. Fight, and every co-worker who saw you two in Vegas gets a subpoena. Your choice. I signed. 3 months later, I moved into a 1-bedroom with echoes instead of laughter. Maya calls Nate's new girlfriend Mommy Sarah now. She still flinches when I hug her too tight, like she's checking if I'm staying. Landon blocked me the day the papers went through. I got exactly what I thought I wanted: freedom. Turns out it's just another word for all the seats at your daughter's birthday being filled by someone else.